Yes, was going to school, was it worth it? Do you think you needed to go there to kind of do what you're doing today, or do you think it helped in any way, or do you think it was like a hindrance or a waste of your time? Kind of where are you with that? Or is it like too
That's a
soon to tell?
really that's a really good question. Forced to meet people and to go out and to do things because the whole idea is the value of business school is in the network you build. So
Okay.
everyone is not even hyper competitive on like what you're going to do after business school or the work you're doing now or anything like that, but on meeting as many people as you can and
Yeah,
just having as much fun as you can because
right.
ultimately in the long run that's going to help.
People that were robbing us because they understood how like, like this
Wow.
makes no fucking sense to me, but I get it. The idea that you're just again feeling the sense of nostalgia about where you're from, it makes sense. So I've had friends from like from Pakistan where we were all sitting around and they were like defending the idea of getting robbed in Pakistan. They were like, but Imran, these guys are like, they're like when we
Yeah, made in India. And so the hand worker economy, supporting the hand worker economy has so many amazing benefits. You're helping a lot of women-owned businesses, like textiles is such
yeah,
a female centered industry. And
yeah,
you're also helping like these poverty-stricken areas, a lot of little villages where this is like the sole source of income. You're helping
yeah.
preserve these cultural techniques that go back hundreds of years and are dying out because they can't compete with um, okay.
All right. Hey, Sana, welcome to the pod. Appreciate
Hi.
you getting on and like taking some time out of your day to come talk to us. So you are currently the founder of the Shai Collective. You went to Columbia Business School, which is a pretty good business school. So
Thanks.
kudos to you on that. So I just thought we'd want to like learn a little bit more about kind of the company that you're working on right now. So I guess just to start, can you maybe tell us what the Shy Collective is and kind of what that's all about? We'll get more into it like later on in the pod, but just as a quick intro, can you kind of walk us through it?
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. This is a really cool thing that you're doing. And Shai, it stands for Sanaa Himani and the Artisans of India. And so, right now, the long term vision for this company is to build a cross cultural, modern Indian brand. And so, that's hopefully going to span across multiple industries if possible. But right now, my background is in retail. And so, I am working on launching an e commerce website pretty soon. It'll be selling home goods and accessories, and they are all there's some component in these home goods and accessories that is touched by Indian artisan hands. So
Okay.
it's not necessarily entirely artisan made, but there is either some material
Wait,
or
this
some
may
sort of
sound like a
design.
this may sound like a stupid question, but what is the difference between artisan made and not artisan made? Or do you, if you don't
Yeah,
know,
sure.
that's fine.
I mean, there are varying levels to it, but essentially you have products today that are mass produced in a factory. So
Yep.
a scarf, for example, can be designed beforehand and then stitched to like hundreds of them, thousands of them will be stitched in a factory with the same sort of stitching. And the difference between that and a scarf being made entirely by an Indian artisan is the fabric is not necessarily it could be hand dyed, the fabric could be hand embroidered, hand stitched. The
Okay.
stitching techniques are different in the sense that some of these techniques can't even be replicated by machines because they're so intricate and involve the use
Okay.
of the fingers and the brain at the same time.
Got it. Got it. Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks for breaking that down. Okay. So you started off so you I know you went to NYU and then you
Mm-hmm.
kind of hopped into retail for a little while and then from
Yes.
there you went to business school. What year did you start at Columbia Business?
So I started in January of 2018. I did
Okay.
something called the J term program, which is basically a year and a half program instead of a traditional 2-year program.
Okay.
It's geared towards people who want to pursue entrepreneurship or want to return to a family business or are sponsored. It's a lot of sponsored consultants will take that route
Okay.
as well.
Okay, cool. So
Uh, yeah.
you already knew that you were gonna go into this entrepreneurship path before you decided to apply to the business school? or to that
Yeah,
program?
I actually applied with a loose business plan. So that was my sort of essay, and all the major essay questions for business school. I tailored it so that I could talk about the business that I wanted to build.
Was this the business or was it something else?
It wasn't going to be retail at first. It was going to be working directly with the artisans to produce products that I had designed or I had
Okay.
envisioned.
Okay.
But the company I worked at prior to business school, called Peach and Lily, it was a Korean beauty company, and they started out as a retailer, so selling other Korean beauty products from Korea and then selling them stateside. So that there was a certain cultural translation that they had to do, as well as uh, sort of marketing these products as a group.
Okay.
And the more I was in business school and sort of reflected on that idea, the more I thought that would be a really good way to launch, because you can, one, bring light to a lot of creatives who are doing amazing things working with these artisans.
Yeah.
So that was pretty meaningful to me. And then two, it's a stronger brand to build when you start out, like showing not just one product at a time, but multiple products to sort of get that brand vision across.
Yeah, fair enough. So your prior work experience ended up kind of informing a lot of what you ended up doing and kind of the direction that you wanted to take this company in. Is that kind of is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I mean, they're very different products, of course,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
different industries, the beauty industry versus, accessories. But um, the business model is essentially the same.
Okay, got it. So you end up in school, and then I guess was going to school, was it worth it? Do you think you needed to go there to kind of do what you're doing today, or do you think it helped in any way, or do you think it was like a hindrance or a waste of your time? Kind of where are you with that? Or is it like too
That's a
soon to tell?
really that's a really good question. And I will say, for me, it was 100% worth it, but
Okay.
it really depends on what you're looking to get out of business school. So I don't think you need business school to start a company. Anyone can do that if you can do your research ahead of time. The classes are great. It gives a nice structured environment to learn certain things, but knowledge education's online these days, so it's easy
Yeah.
to do that without paying the huge
Yeah.
tuition cost.
Yeah.
Um, but for me, I didn't necessarily, I sort of defined my priorities going into business school as building this company and meeting as many people as possible to expand my network, and just getting a lot of personal growth. So saying yes to everything and doing things that I wouldn't normally do. So getting out of my comfort zone.
Okay.
And it was really great that I defined that beforehand. And for me, the biggest thing I think I got out of business school was the personal growth, because wasn't really that confident of a person beforehand. So I don't even know if I had the confidence to go out on my own and launch a company. But after business school, after meeting so many people,
Yeah.
after sort of getting certain communication skills and everything, I felt
Yeah.
really comfortable doing that.
What do you think gave you that confidence? What, like, was there like, I think Oprah says like aha moment or something, like some of that shit. Like
Yeah.
what was it about, like, being, cuz to me, like, I've had like the opposite experience happen in grad school where I'm like I feel great. Like I remember in grad school, like after our first semester, like I remember everybody had gotten like I think because everything was weighted. So like I mean pretty much everyone who was doing really well in undergrad, now that we're all competing together and then having a weighted score, most of you start falling somewhere in the middle. And I remember
Mm,
one of our professors was just like, welcome to grad school. Like, this is what's going to happen. And I remember that was a
yeah.
big wake up call for me where I was like, yeah, I thought I was really smart. And then I come in here and I'm like, oh my fucking God, man, maybe I'm not as bright as I thought. So for you, it seems to have had the opposite impact where you go in and you start getting this sense of confidence and you start feeling better about it. So what was that moment when you were in grad school where you kind of started feeling that way?
I would say business school is very different from most traditional graduate programs,
Yeah.
in the sense that at Columbia and at a lot of business schools in general, there's a grade non-disclosure policy. So when you're recruiting, you are required to not tell the recruiter your GPA. Recruiter cannot ask you what your
Oh,
GPA is, and
wow.
if there's any of that, like, people get in big trouble for that.
Okay.
So as a result, you can take classes freely, things you
Yeah.
wouldn't normally take, things you don't have experience in. They
Yeah.
want you to learn,
Yeah.
and not worry about the grades. So because of that, there's a lot more sort of, so there's like this huge social aspect to business school where, the classes are good, but like people don't really follow them that seriously unless there's one that you particularly love. So like not
Yeah.
going to class for like a week because you want to go to this trip to I don't know, China, that your friend is from China is leading and taking you
Yeah.
around to the places, it's like, that's an obvious, like, okay, I'm going to go on this trip instead if you can.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so just the whole social aspect, like being sort of encouraged and almost forced to meet people and to go out and to do things, because the whole idea is the value of business school is in the network you build. So
Okay.
everyone is not even hyper competitive on like what you're going to do after business school or the work you're doing now or anything like that, but on meeting as many people as you can and
Yeah.
just having as much fun as you can, because
Right.
ultimately in the long run, that's going to help you make these
Yeah,
connections that you
that's a
can tap
better
into later on.
incentive model. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense where it's like you're competitive about meeting that automatically, I think, like makes everything like way less pressure filled, I feel like.
Totally.
And that's a good thing. And that's what you kind of need to I think learn, right? So I think to feel confident to kind of get that. So in terms of like social networking and all that, did you I feel like maybe I'm misremembering, but I feel like when I was following you on IG, I thought I saw you in Russia. Did that happen? Was
Yes,
that you? Okay.
I did. I knew there's a friend of mine who is from Russia, and she worked at McKinsey in
Okay.
Moscow. And so she went to business school here in New York, and she lives here now. She stayed here and transferred to the McKinsey office in New York.
Okay.
And so she really, she loved her culture. And this was a time where, it was 2018, so 2 years after the 2016 election. So
Yeah.
Russia was, it's still a hot topic today. Like
Yeah.
there are a lot of mixed feelings about the country. And she,
I mean, that was like in the middle of
acknowledges,
impeachment. Like that was like I think like
yeah,
2018 or like in the heart of deciding between
right
these
before
two
when
people.
things were
Yeah.
sort of leading up. Yeah. So she, it's tough because when you grow up in a country and you have this sort of love for your country, and then all of a sudden it's vilified
Yeah.
in the press, and like it makes somebody want to show the good parts of the country too. And so
Yeah.
she did not defend some of the things that the country is doing that is
Sure.
very questionable, but
Sure. Sure.
she definitely showed us like the parts that were meaningful to her, and
Yeah.
therefore we saw both
Right.
sides, which was
Right. And
great.
there's a nostalgia, right? To, I mean, where you grow up from. I mean, even if it's like not ideal. Like I've had friends from like from Pakistan where we were all sitting around and they were like defending the idea of getting robbed in Pakistan. They were like, but Imran, these guys are like, they're like, when we would get robbed, like my parents would still feed the people that were robbing us because they understood how like, and I'm like, this
Wow.
makes no fucking sense to me, but I get it. The idea that you're just again feeling the sense of nostalgia about where you're from, it makes sense. So what was Russia like for you? What was that experience like? What was Moscow like?
It was so different. It was weird in the sense that it's just so different from any place I've ever been. Like people, it's kind of like New York in the sense like people are not sort of waving to you or smiling at you on the
Yeah,
street. Like everyone is doing
yeah,
their
I
own
imagine
thing and
that.
very
Yeah,
focused. Everyone
yeah,
is very blunt. So, you go to a coffee shop or a bar or something, and people will say like just what's your order? Like there's no
yeah,
niceties or
yeah,
or or trying to make small talk or anything, which I don't know,
yeah,
being from New York, I sort of prefer that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes
um
sense.
yeah, but then
Okay.
there's like all this elaborate architecture. Like there's some things are really stark and like minimalist, and then some things are super elaborate from like back in the day in
Yeah,
history
yeah,
when that
yeah.
was like
No,
the
no,
trend.
fair enough. It's a super rich culture. I mean, would you recommend anybody go if they don't have a friend there to kind of guide them through it, or would you say like, maybe steer clear?
No, I think it's entirely possible, and I didn't feel unsafe at any time or anything like that. You just have to make sure you do a ton of research beforehand, and there's not a lot that's written in English, so that
Okay.
you have to sort of plan things out, have a really strong itinerary beforehand.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Mhm.
So, you did that trip while you were in business school, and I guess kind of finishing up on the business school experience. Overall, it seems like it was a really positive experience for you. Was there
Mhm.
one particular course that stood out to you, where you were like, or one thing that where you were like, this was by far the most valuable thing for me, other than like sort of like the social side, but in terms of like the actual like practical education that you got there? Was there a course that
Yeah.
stands out to you that like you still reference back to now that like that has had an impact on you?
Oh, yeah. So there are two classes in particular. The first it was called REAP, REAP, and it's the Reentry Acceleration Program. So that program, it was a pilot. I think it was like the second course or second year that they've ever done it, but they basically trained us on the U.S. prison system and all the sort of the intricacies and issues surrounding it, and
Uh-huh.
how when people are released into society, they have a really, really hard time because
They're
they
fucked.
are,
Yeah, they're totally
yeah,
fucked. Yeah.
I mean, they
Yeah.
have like for years, like there's not a lot of access to too much learning inside the prison.
Yeah.
They don't know what's going on outside.
Right.
And then there's a lot of stigma against these people who are just trying
Yeah.
to, who have been locked up for things that are not necessarily like it's a product of the area that they grew up in or the culture
Right.
they grew up in, or,
Right.
a minor offense that they were locked up for entirely way too long, and then
Right.
having to rebuild your life and then have people look at you and be like, this person went to prison. It's really difficult.
Right.
And
Right.
so we went and taught, I taught a course for one semester up at Taconic facility. It's a women's prison. I
Okay.
taught entrepreneurship, and that was like, it was heartbreaking because to see the conditions, I mean, to see these women and like, they want to do so much and they want to change their life, but they're stuck and
Yeah.
they have these great ideas from when they come out, but it's going to be hard. So it was tough to see how the system is still not ideal today. And
Yeah.
it was also like one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done.
Do you
The
know?
second,
Oh,
mhm,
sorry. Before you move on, do you know what? I know like the recidivism rates are really, really high for men, right? Where it's like,
mhm.
you're going back most likely.
It's
Do you
like
know what the
70
rates?
something percent
Yeah.
for,
Do
I
you know
don't
what
know
the rates?
exactly
I think I
for
think it's
women.
exactly around that much, right? So,
Yeah.
do you know if the rates are similar for women too? Do you know if they're
I'm not sure how it's split
okay,
male to female, but
okay,
I
okay.
would assume that it's pretty similar.
Yeah. Okay, fair
Mhm.
enough. So that seems like that would have been one hell of an experience to be around
Yeah,
that, see that, because I'm sure some of these women are like moms. Some of these women, you know what I mean? It's like some of them might be young, some of them might be older. It's like I don't know. They all probably have like really like traumatic stories too about why or how they ended up where they ended up, right? So
for sure, for sure. And then they talk about their families, and then a lot of them even, it's hard to even have like, sometimes prison is tough on families too. So people
yeah,
where they may have been closer to their families before, it's hard to sort of keep that going. And yeah,
yeah,
there's a lot of issues, but they form a sort of community while they're in there. And they just loved coming to class. Like they
that's
loved
awesome.
coming up with business plans, and like a lot of them are really into social entrepreneurship, which is starting a company that'll help other people while making money for profit.
That's
So
so crazy. It's like the forgotten trying to. It's always kind of weird how that works out. Like even today, like now you realize what an essential worker is. You know what I mean? It's like
mhm.
I don't know. It's like I feel like the people that are like the least advantaged tend to be doing the most for like society. So the fact that these
Mhm.
women are still actually thinking about like social entrepreneurship seems so like mind-boggling to me. I'd be thinking about greed and how do I get the most out of it for me, and then moving on. But it's
Right. So
yeah,
some
no,
of
it's
the
incredible.
Yeah, and they just also, a lot of the work they want to do is with prison reform
Yeah,
and with people who are coming out of prison, which makes a lot of sense. They
yeah.
can empathize strongly with
I
that position.
I know. There was also like I saw this thing with Jeff Ross too a while back. He's like a comedian, does like a bunch of roasts and stuff. So he
Hmm.
actually went into a female. He went to prisons and he went to a female prison too, and he started roasting like the inmates there. Like this is like a
Hmm.
way to again build that continuity. I think to humanize people. You know what I'm saying? So if you
Yeah,
haven't seen that,
yeah,
I'd recommend checking that out at some point. But
for sure.
it's pretty fucking funny to see him like
Yeah,
yeah, to see him tear up these women, but they're all laughing about it. They're all having a good time. So,
yeah,
so you do that course, and then so you end up having that experience. And then what was the other course you had mentioned there were two?
yeah. So the other course, it was called something about, I forget the exact name, but it was about corporate governance. And
Yeah.
that was a class I actually took because I didn't have enough credits for the semester because I didn't into one of the other classes I wanted. My friend
Okay.
was in that one. So I was like, okay, this will be a fun course. It was a week long course. It's called a block week. So I was like, that's an easy way to get the credits.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
whole course was around how do you run a company ethically and incentivize the people in management positions to run this company according to the morals and the values of the company. And that it changed entirely the way I think about not only business but about people in general, and what makes them do the things they do, and how do we structure systems and put things in place that will help make these systems run smoothly, efficiently, and according to the values that you want them to. So
Yeah.
from a person who is starting a company, I haven't hired anybody yet, but it's something that I think about a lot when I do,
Yeah.
because I generally prefer working alone, and so thought of like hiring somebody
I
and
mean,
working with other
it's
people
hard
was
to
like,
scale if you're doing it alone. I guess. Yeah. I guess
exactly, exactly,
that's the one issue with that. But I think like my
exactly.
wife is the same way. Like she like when she was running her business or whatever, she was like like I would tell her all the time, like, I think you need to hire, like, I think you need to get some help. And
Mm-hmm.
he was just like, no, no one's gonna do it as good as me. And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, but that's the price you pay. But that's the price you pay for growth,
Right.
right? I mean, there's some drop off, right? I mean, you can't hire you
Yeah.
over and over again. So yeah,
And
yeah, good
women
luck.
in general, hmm women in general, I think they have a need to sort of prove themselves and say like, I can do it. I can do everything on my own and I don't need the extra help. And so I understand from that perspective too.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And maybe that might have been there too. For me, I'm like the exact opposite. I'm like, man, I don't need to prove shit. Like if I don't know it, I don't know it. I have
Yeah.
no problem. Like I tell my wife all the time, like the people that I have on my team now that I work with or whatever are like so much more talented, so much better at everything than me. And I'm like, thank God for everybody
Yeah.
around me because it's like
No,
it's
that's
tough,
great.
you know. So yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully when you start getting to that phase and you start kind of applying some of that stuff, did they give you like case studies on like companies and like how they had
Oh
created
yeah.
these like sort of systems or whatever in place so that they can ensure that like the ethics or the
Yeah,
values or
tons.
whatever were being met? Can you give me some like
Yeah,
examples?
they gave us good examples of companies that were doing it wrong and then companies that were doing it the right way. And I think I ended up writing my final paper on the, what was it, the South African prison system or something like that,
Okay.
and how just like, or no, that was one of the examples. It was for profit prisons and how the incentives around that are just terrible. Like
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
these these companies just want to make money. So at what cost though? Human
Yeah.
lives, and
Right.
it's just, it's tough.
Yeah, it's a strange model. It's a strange model too, and I didn't realize this, but like I think even with Mike Bloomberg when he was running, I don't know if you heard the story where it was like they were doing a series of like robocalls, but I think the I can't remember if it was a robocalls or what, but he was like I think he had hired or contracted like federal prison workers to do a lot of his work for him for his
Oh,
campaign.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean they're as cheap as they come, right? So like
Right.
that's like yeah. So it's just kind of crazy to think that like even these presidential candidates are still using like federal
Hmm.
federal prison workers to do some of their work. It's just again
It's
it's just
complicated too because there was a New York State they were going to start producing hand sanitizer when we were running low,
that's right. That's
for the
right.
current situation. Yeah, and
Yeah.
they were having inmates do it too at like something less than $1 per hour,
Yeah.
getting paid. So it's
Which
like
is
people
again, I
are
don't know.
argue
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's like you need some ethicists to decide like how ethical is that? Like what wage should you be
totally,
paying them? I don't know. I don't know
totally.
what
It
that.
gets
I don't know.
really complicated.
For
Yeah.
sure, for sure. So you end up while you're in business school, you'd already had some idea that you were going to start this project called the Shai Collective. The
Right. Right.
format may have changed, the specific direction of it may have changed a little bit,
Yeah.
but what ends up happening after you graduate, or did you end up launching the program like the company while you were in school, or did you end up
So I
graduating and launching the company?
I filed for the LLC towards like in May, or March or April or something like that, towards the end, right before I graduated. So I
Okay.
took a series of courses towards the end of business school because I really prioritized the social aspect and just getting personal growth and developing these skills and traits
Yeah.
beforehand. I saw a ton. I That wasn't the plan originally. I was like, I'm gonna go to business school and then just work on this company entirely. That will be my whole focus. And like the other
Yeah.
things are important too, but that's really why I'm going, and I don't want to waste money.
Yeah.
Um, and so, but once
Very
I
desi of you.
started,
That's very desi
yeah,
of you. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. Um, but once I started seeing those changes, I was like, okay, this is invaluable. And so I kind of pushed it towards the end of school. And then I took a bunch of courses during my last semester. So um, there was like a intro to entrepreneurship course I took. And then I applied to a class. You had to apply to get in and like pitch your business idea. It's called the Greenhouse Program. And it's
Yeah.
essentially kind of like an incubator for startups. So I got into that, and they just had a bunch of entrepreneurs who have had success come back and talk about their companies and how they did it and
Yeah.
what resources they used to help them get there. A lot of them had gone to Columbia Business School as well.
Oh, okay.
So that was a foot in the door. So for that, then I applied to the Columbia Startup Lab. So after graduation, they give you like a super subsidized rate for WeWork for a year, and you can work out of there. And I applied to that. And if you're in the greenhouse program, it's like a foot in the door to get into that program. So that
Okay.
helped. And then so in the greenhouse program, I finally filed for the LLC. I did a bunch of tests to see like, is this a viable business idea, and
Yeah.
just some more research and everything. And then I made like a mock website, and then it seemed more attainable at that point because I was still like really daunted by the idea. Like, how do I launch a company? I'm just like one person, and
Right.
there's so much I don't know, but it really helps you develop the muscle that like, okay, if you don't know something, Google it, figure it out. Like,
Yeah.
just move forward at all costs.
Yeah, that's been a growing trend I've noticed with a lot of like the people that I've talked to so far, like a lot of the entrepreneurs and stuff. It's like I don't think there's any one course or any series of courses even that'll prepare you to run your own company until you just kind of do it. And then when you realize
Yeah.
how much you don't know, you just
Hmm.
kind of Google it, or you end
Yeah.
up like one of our previous conversations with somebody was like, so in the beginning it was a series of just Googling it, and then as things started, like as time value money, like that calculation started factoring in as you started scaling up, then they started
Hmm.
bringing in the experts and saying, rather than me having to learn everything, now I'll start bringing in the experts to kind of
Hmm.
save myself a little bit of time. So at
Right.
this point, when you're like deciding to kind of frame your company and what the framework of the company will kind of look like, are you vetting your
Hmm.
idea with people in school or with like your professors or with people, or are you just kind of keeping it internally, thinking about it yourself, and then researching what may or may not work? What was that process like?
I talked to everyone about it. One, because I was really excited about the idea, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
two, like I especially like to pick the brains of like my Indian American friends or my, with a South Asian background,
yeah,
because that's my like very target customer to begin with, and then I'm going to sort of build it out from there. And I think the larger customer is like going to be somebody who loves to travel, who has global preferences, who shops at Anthropology, that sort of thing.
yeah, yeah,
But I wanted to find success in my immediate like friends and family circle first. So
yeah,
I would show a lot of pictures of product and be like, do you think this is a cool idea? What would you want different? And sort of, I saw a lot of excitement around that stuff, and people loved the social component of it, supporting the hand
yeah,
worker economy and all the great benefits that come with that. And so it was more of like a gut feeling. And I also learned in business, like you can do as many like A/B tests as you can, and like, really do your research and do surveys
yeah,
and everything before you launch a company, but you just never know how it's going to turn out and how people
yeah.
are going to
Just
respond
gotta
to it.
fucking
So
launch it. Yeah,
yeah, and like do it in the cheapest way that you can.
yeah,
If you're still sort of testing, as cheap as you can, and just go off of the successes. And one thing they told us that was really helpful in the beginning of one of my entrepreneurship courses, they said 75% of you, or like three-fourths of you, or something like that, majority of you are going to not end up pursuing the idea that you have in your head right now. So like you have to do as many tests as you can, and then use the knowledge and keep iterating and iterate on your idea again and again and again.
yeah,
And you're going to pivot, and most of
yeah,
you are going to pivot. And everyone was like, I don't think so. I really like my idea. It's really good. But most of us did end up pivoting. Like, even if it was a slight pivot,
yeah.
you have to be open to that.
Right, 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 right. So, so you end up kind of vetting the idea with people, and then so you said, I like what you said. You got to test with as little money spent as possible, right? So, like in like an
Totally.
economical way, obviously. So,
Yes.
what did you do? So, you said you had launched a mock website. What was that process like? What was
I
the platform
su-
that you used? What did you put on there? What were the products that were on there? And what were you kind of hoping to get out of that?
Yeah, so I launched like a Squarespace, and I don't know what I was like, we needed a minimum viable product. It's called an MVP,
Yeah,
at the end of the course to like pass essentially. And so my minimum viable product is going to be a website that I could then do things like test off of. So I could, for example, put up a product and like see how many people are going to click that product, and if they buy it, or if they sign up for a waiting list if I don't actually have the product or whatever.
yeah,
um, so that was the expectation. I did not do anything with that website, but I will say it really helped in the sense that I was like, oh my God, I can build a website. This is something that I
yeah,
can do for my own computer. I don't need to hire somebody outside and spend a ton of money on like a designer for a website. There
yeah.
are templates, and it's something you can do easily on your own. So that, from that perspective, it just made it like, okay, it was like the push to keep moving forward and to keep trying to launch this company.
Got it. So you end up doing that. You kind of, I guess, get some information out of it. I guess you don't take it to product. You don't take it to launch. I guess you don't like. You're not selling. You never actually sold product through that website, right? Through
No,
that.
I didn't. And I was
Okay.
still sort of sourcing the products and the designers and the creatives that I wanted. So
Yeah.
I was nowhere near ready to launch anything. I just had
So
things that I thought would be cool to have on the website.
yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. So where are
Mhm.
you now with the Shy Collective? What is it? Is it now a company that you can actually buy product from today? Are you still currently in that research phase? Where are you with
We, yeah, so I'm about to launch. So I was actually supposed to launch maybe like a month ago, but once everything with coronavirus started happening,
that? Yeah,
it just
yeah,
did not feel like an appropriate time. It was
yeah,
not like this kind of stuff is not what people are focused on or buying.
yeah.
And it just didn't feel right. And then also, I don't want to go to the post office and ship things out. So I've been self quarantining, social distancing, and staying at
Okay.
home.
Yeah,
But in the meantime, I'm still like working on a content schedule. So once we do launch and doing like, I want to launch a blog, so I'm interviewing some people for the blog and that sort of thing. So still chugging along, but I think we'll launch the e-commerce website uh, once everything dies down a little bit and it
fair
it
enough.
becomes a bit safer out there.
And how
Yeah.
will people know that you have this platform, that you're doing this? How will people find you? What is
Yeah.
it that somebody like? How would somebody know that like the kinds of product offerings that you're offering are out there? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, can you
Yeah.
help me do that?
So I currently have an Instagram account. It's at Shai Collective,
Yeah, I think I
SHAI
have it up. Give me
Collective.
a second. Let me try. I did
Great.
some prep work for this.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So there you go. You can see it, right?
Oh, yeah, perfect.
Yeah, this
There
is
you
an
go.
awesome page. Yeah, this is
Exactly.
super cool.
Thank you. Thanks. So that kind of gives like the aesthetic of what I'm going for and the
Oh, that's
kind
you.
of
Yeah.
products and content that I think would resonate with people, or it's to also find people and an
Yeah.
audience that connects with this kind of stuff. And so each caption, like it's kind of like a mini essay. I don't know who's reading the captions, if anyone, but they're really detailed and provide a lot of information. And so some people
About
have,
the product, right? And like the genesis of the product, like the colors. I read a
yeah,
few
the
captions earlier.
techniques. Oh, great. Yeah, yeah. So it's all information about the artisan techniques behind it, or the the creatives behind it, and that sort of thing. A lot of spotlighting on interesting people,
Yeah.
interesting techniques that
And are you
and
going to be
history as well.
contacting these guys to then say like, "Hey, I'm going to take your shit, put it on my website because I like the
Yeah,
story, I like the background," and then there'll be like just some margin on top for you. Is that kind of the thought process there? Is that like to simplify the
yeah.
model?
Exactly. So some of them, not all of them, but a lot of them I am currently contacting because the right now I'm the products on there are a range of everything. So there's like an ice cream company that I really like that has
Yeah, yeah,
Indianish
yeah.
flavors, and then
Yeah.
there's like a super fine jewelry company that is like each piece is probably like upwards of $1 million. So it's
Okay.
not all stuff that I can really sell, but yeah, some of them I'm definitely reaching out to and partnering with right now.
Okay.
And yeah, so it's been really good. And I actually had a little pop-up shop before, right before, again, like before, like a week before we were supposed to launch, and I got a lot of really great feedback on the products we were selling there, and
That's cool.
my
So
first sales too.
oh, nice. Congrats. So yeah,
Thanks.
first sale is huge. Yeah, that's like a really because you need wins. I feel like that's really important in business. I feel like in whether it's e-commerce or whatever, like you need to
Hmm.
have something validate. And then other than like people saying they like your idea, it's like you got to have the money behind it to prove that you like the idea. Because
Right.
people like ideas all the fucking time. It's just, are you going to put money behind it or not? You know, are you going to buy what
Yeah.
you're selling, right? So
Exactly. And we're bootstrapping the company. By we, I mean me, because it's just me right now. But I'm bootstrapping the company. So I'm using my savings to do this
yeah,
and trying to do it in the most affordable way possible while still retaining integrity and quality.
yeah.
And
How much
it's
have you
funny
had to
because
invest in the company so far, if you feel comfortable sharing that?
yeah, yeah. So far, it really, if you take into account the rent I've been paying at the WeWork at Columbia Startup Lab, in addition to purchasing inventory, and some vendors are doing things on consignment, so or drop shipping, so the I don't have to actually purchase at the
Yeah,
wholesale price until a sale is made from another
yeah.
customer, so that's been helpful. But all in all, I would say probably around 5K so far,
Okay. Okay. That's
which is
very manageable. And I think and I've started realizing that also, that most startup businesses in today's time do not require upfront purchases of large inventory, even if you're not going on a
No.
dropship model. But
Mm-hmm.
you don't need to buy 10,000 units of something. You can test with a much smaller amount. Building a website
Yeah.
today is way easier and more cost effective than it was, like, say, 10 years ago, when you didn't
Yeah.
have like pre-made platforms where you needed designers and you needed a web developer and all that stuff.
No, and there's so many like resources I'm learning about that make it so much easier. Like I was nervous because I didn't know how to use Photoshop and I wasn't a professional photographer. So I was like, how am I going to have these product shots without paying an arm and a leg for like a whole photo shoot session to
Right.
happen? But
And what did you
there's
find?
something called it's actually funny. It's a lot of influencers on social media will use it, but there's an app called Facetune.
Okay.
And so people will like use it for like weird things like make my nose smaller or make my legs thinner in this picture. But I actually used it for like blurring out like any flaws in a picture. So like if there's a
Okay.
product photo and I have like a scrunchie on my arm and I'm taking a picture of my scrunchie on like portrait mode on my iPhone,
Yeah.
and then I have like a scar or something,
Yeah.
I can like edit it out so it looks more professional, like a
For,
professional
for
did it.
sure.
And
For
like,
sure. And
you
are
know,
you doing all
yeah.
your, and you're obviously doing all your product photography and all that stuff too, right?
Yeah, I'm just like doing it off my iPhone. There's an
Yeah.
app called Canva that's really good that you
Yeah.
can like make a digital sort of like, if you're making a poster or like for our pop-up shop, I wanted to do like a little promo thing that I could put on Instagram with text and my logo and stuff. So that was cool because I could do it without like needing Photoshop to
Right.
where like as 10 years ago, I would definitely need to have those Photoshop skills to do it. So
For sure.
everything is online. It's very accessible if you
Yeah.
just do your research and like if you don't know something, if you want an easier way to do something, it's usually out there. You just have to like ask people and Google it.
For sure, for sure. And so the pop-up shop, how did you come up with the idea of doing a pop-up shop, and what were you selling your product, like like your handmade product or your product there, or were you selling people or artisans that you kind of have worked with already, and were you taking their products and selling it there? Kind of what happened there? Can you walk me through that?
Yeah, so it's both. The pop-up idea was not my own. I was actually like, I didn't want to do anything until I launched the website. That was my sole focus. And then a friend of mine, she has a company called Rent Alia, and they do like Indian occasion wear rentals. So
Okay.
if you have like a wedding coming up and you don't want to splurge on like a big
Yeah.
fancy dress, Indian dress,
Yeah.
you can rent from their company. And so she was like, let's do this pop-up. There's some symbiosis here. Like,
Yeah.
it's both like
Yeah.
a sort of South Asian theme. And she had like a couple of other contacts who wanted to help out with a pop-up shop and potentially showcase their items or their product there too.
That's cool.
So I was
That's
like, yeah, it was a push that I needed because I was like, I don't
yeah.
know, I'm not ready for this yet, whatever. And then I was like, okay, you know what? This is a good idea. It's a good opportunity. I'll
Yeah.
just do it.
Yeah.
And so I had inventory from one vendor who sells these like really cool baseball caps that have this Bamini printed fabric, which is like an Indian tie-dye technique that goes back hundreds of years.
Yeah.
So I had those in 4 different colorways. And then I also have, I made these like scrunchies. So this was not a designer that I tapped into. This was actually a product of my own. So I bought
Was
fabric.
I think this was the hat, right? Right here?
That's the hat. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay,
So that,
cool. Is the scrunchie on
yeah.
here too?
The scrunchie is it's only if you go like to the Instagram highlights, and if you click on the pop-up shop, there's like one picture
Oh,
that
okay, okay,
has two
cool. Let
people
me
wearing
see.
the
Oh,
scrunchie.
yeah, I'm on my
Yeah.
computer, so it may be kind of weird. Let me see. Hold on. Let's see if
Yeah.
I can see it. No, not yet. Oh shit.
I think it's the next one.
Let me see if I
No,
see it. No,
oh
still not
no.
yet. All right. Well, I'm
Oh,
sure
I
it's
guess
there.
not.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm sure people can find it though. Or if not, maybe that can be one of your posts coming up.
Yeah, and we're as soon as we're able to launch the website, it's going to be on there. So it was cool. It's
Cool.
also Bamini fabric, a Bamini silk fabric. And so I got fabric shipped from India and found somebody in Florida who knew how to stitch them and
Yeah.
got them made. So
So
between
so yeah, sorry,
Mhm.
continue. Go ahead.
Yeah, so there's 2 different scrunchies I was selling and 4 different hats, so about 6 products. And people definitely, there were sales, and not just of my friends who wanted to support,
Yeah,
but of
yeah,
people I
yeah.
didn't know either. So that was really reassuring and to
Yeah.
see. And yeah, it's exciting.
Was it a South Asian that ended up purchasing from you, or was it like a
There
white
was a
person?
South Asian and a non-South Asian person, which was like
Nice.
the ultimate. I was like, okay, people think this is cool, and even if they don't understand like the artisan's technique or instantly recognize it, they can still
Yeah.
appreciate that it's artisan made and that there's a
Yeah.
story behind it. So
No,
that
that's
was really
awesome.
great.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. And so now, how are you finding these artisans to connect with? So I guess like that's going to
Mhm.
be a big part of what you end up doing. So do you already have like all the people that you want to work with now, or are you still kind of adding to that list? Where are you with
It's
that?
both. So I have like a ton of people and products saved that I need to continue to reach out to.
Yeah.
I don't want like a ton of product at first because I'm only one person. So I don't, like as soon as you introduce a new product or something else, it adds a level of complexity. And the more complexity you add to a business, the more expensive it gets and the more complex it does get.
Right.
So I'm trying to keep things a little easy and add slowly but strategically and grow that way.
Yeah.
But I have a ton of, I used to do this for fun, for like years. I've been doing this for fun. It's just like finding this cool product and like
Yeah.
that sort of reflects
Wait, I have a
my
question for
culture and
you. When
upbringing.
you
Mhm.
say adding something strategically, what does that mean?
So let's say I launch with like a few, like maybe just three different brands,
Yeah.
a few products within each brand, but just only three. Then I can sort of, that's your real test. So like who is buying what and in what colors sell the best and what product kinds of products sell the best? What
Yeah.
feedback am I getting from customers? Like, do they like it? Is there something wrong with the quality? That sort of thing.
Yeah. Are you
And
able to
then from
connect with the artisan directly and say like how much of this product are you moving on your own? Like is that a part of like is that part of like the vetting process when you're deciding? Because I guess you're right. Like you don't want to bring in a product. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. I don't know what the model is. But do you factor
Mhm.
that into like their own sales as like a basis for deciding if you're going to want them in your shop to see if they'll actually move that product or no?
No, no, not necessarily. And I don't right now working with the designers who are working with the artisans, I don't have like that direct line
Yeah.
to them. And hopefully in the future, like I would absolutely want to create and sell stuff under the Shy brand name that and work directly with these artisans and learn more about the processes that way.
Yeah.
But right now it's a lot of like asking the designer and the creatives the questions like how how are they making this and like what technique are they using and how are you finding it and like all of that stuff and
Yeah.
are they using natural dyes or not. So that's been a big part of the process. And
Okay.
eventually like the more experience I have and the more sales I
Yeah.
have, the closer I'll be able to touch the
Yeah, I
artisan
think
and
I
start to
think
get
my
some stuff.
questions are like more like the shitty questions, whereas yours like relate more to like the authenticity of the brand and like that
Yeah.
person and like I'm like, how much do you move? Let me bring it onto my
It's
website.
yeah, and it's funny because like my career it has been in like inventory analysis and like when I
Okay.
was at Macy's before I was at the Korean beauty company, and so it was
Okay.
all like inventory planning and replenishment and that sort of
Yeah.
thing. So I
Yeah.
do think it's like super important, but this stuff is also like because it's not factory made, there's actually not a ton of pieces, so that
Yeah.
it takes them a lot, and that's like one of the larger issues that I will be dealing with is like how if something sells really well, how do you scale it up? It's hard to scale artisan
Yeah.
product, really hard.
True, true.
Um,
That would be a
but
great problem to have. That would be an amazing because I think even having
yeah.
like the exclusivity of it too. It's like the like almost like that Birkin bag. I mean, that's a like a like a weird thing to compare it
No,
to,
yeah,
but it's
no, that's a
almost like
great.
they can make in that case they can actually scale it easily. They just deliberately choose to not scale it. They deliberately choose to almost make it seem like
Yeah,
you can't buy it.
yeah.
You know what I
It's
mean?
a great
They code you.
example too because a Birkin bag is also like, yeah, it's a status symbol, but it's also the reason it became a status symbol is because of the handcrafted quality. Each Birkin bag is sewed and stitched by hand. The leather is super high quality, and
Yeah,
so not everyone who buys one is buying it for that reason, but the reason that they became such a
yeah,
popular item is because of that aspect. So I
right.
do think like that's why people, you have a lot of people in the tech world and the entrepreneurship world, a lot of VCs, and they'll be like, well, yeah, this is they'll turn their heads away from it because they'll be like, this is really too hard to scale. We want something easy tech that's very easy to scale up.
Yeah,
And while I totally understand that, and there's so much value in that too, I think artisan product is overlooked and you
yeah.
are underestimating your customers by saying that they don't want this stuff and that they will always go for the cheaper item.
For sure, for sure, and you can actually scale out. I mean, you can actually find more artisans that have really cool shit to introduce to your site. So that's
Yeah,
another
it doesn't have to be the same product over and over again. It can
right.
be like capsule collections, and you see that a lot with streetwear these days. All these designers coming out with capsule collections, and people just they'll sell out
Wait,
instantly, and
what's
then
that?
they'll
What's that? What is that? I actually don't know what that is. Capso collection.
oh capsule collection. So you'll see like a Virgil Abloh will come out with like off-white like collection with or Supreme and Louis Vuitton,
Yeah.
that collection.
Yeah.
So that it's only a limited number of pieces, and it's this interesting collaboration that won't happen again necessarily,
Yeah.
and limited product types. And so people just go crazy over it because it's these two big names, or
Yeah.
there's an interesting story behind one or two or both of the names.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so it's and you know, you have designers doing this like limited collection around some story or some idea, and they'll come out and they won't do reorders. They won't, it's like limited, and people just go crazy for it because it's something that you can have that not everyone else can have.
Right, right. And that's going to be a lot of, I think that's probably going to be a lot of the product that you end up getting onto your website. So when can we
Mhm.
expect the website up? Put it out there. Let's hold you to it. Yeah.
TBD, because I'm ready to go. I'm ready to launch,
Yeah.
but and it's a weird environment right now with this virus going around. So
Right.
I think I'm waiting
You're
it
in New
out.
York. So you're,
I'm
yeah,
in New
you're
York.
on
I'm
belly of the
actually,
beast.
yeah, I went home to my parents before everything got really crazy, and then I was here visiting them, and then I decided to stay because I was like, if I'm going to be, this
Yeah.
is seeming dangerous. I don't want to go back to the city and then come back and
Yeah.
potentially,
Yeah.
give
So
something to my
you ended up
parents. So
going upstate, correct? So is that, you're in
to
upstate?
Long Island, so
Oh, Long
it's like
Island. Okay. Okay.
eastern
Oh,
of
okay. Okay.
east of Manhattan. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm
Cool.
here for the time being. My inventory is still at my apartment, so I
Yeah.
can't even technically launch from here. But yeah, once hopefully a vaccine and medicine comes around and it becomes
Yeah.
safer to go outside, then I'm just going to play it by ear.
Yeah,
And
and luckily you didn't invest more than around 5,000. So the amount of inventory that you have back at home, it's not like you're sitting on like $50,000 worth of inventory that's just kind of sitting
no,
there.
and I also thought to myself, like that was done very purposely, because I was like, I'll invest a little bit in the inventory, just a few pieces, and if something sells, great, and if it doesn't, I'm not stuck with hundreds of thousands of pieces or thousands of
Right,
pieces.
right, right,
And so
right.
it's okay if I sell out of a product and people have to sign up for a waiting list while I ask the artisan or the designer to produce more.
Yeah,
But it's not okay to be stuck with like thousands of pieces and not be able to move it.
for sure, for sure. And I think that the work that you're about to be doing too is going to be pretty cool. I hope this gets off the ground sooner than later, because it would be nice to kind of because whatever you have on your IG page right now already looks really cool. So is
Thank you
that going
so
to be
much.
mainly those products, like the stuff that we see there? Is that what's primarily going to be brought over, or do you have other stuff in the pipeline that we haven't seen yet?
There are some other things in the pipeline that you haven't seen yet. I think there was like a vendor that I've talked about, but I haven't shown all the products yet, maybe just one, and it was a long time ago. So I want it to be exciting, and I want to put it up on the Instagram and promote it in a way that is exciting and tells a story, because I think part of being able to sell this stuff and justify the price points for some of these things is
Yeah,
being able to say this is a thing of quality because it's handmade. Every part of it has been touched by hands, and it's just a
yeah.
beautiful design, and you can't get this anywhere else for those
Right.
reasons.
And then you'd be supporting local artisans too, and a lot of the work and a lot of the product that's getting made is getting made overseas, like maybe made in India, right?
Yeah, made in
Right.
India. And so the hand worker supporting the hand worker economy has so many amazing benefits. You're helping a lot of women-owned businesses. Like textiles is such
Yeah.
a female centered industry, and
Yeah.
you're also helping like these poverty stricken areas, a lot of little villages where this is like the sole source of income. You're helping
Yeah.
preserve these cultural techniques that go back hundreds of years and are dying out because they can't compete with fast fashion. And if you take these techniques and make them more relevant, so like a lot of these techniques are only being used for things that aren't necessarily relevant to a Western audience or in the modern world. But if you take a technique, so I can't wear a sari to class or school or work every day, but if you take that same
It'd be
material
funny if
and
you
make a
did, but yeah.
pillow,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sure. Sure.
I mean, I would probably get some weird looks, but I'd still do it. But if you take the material and make like a pillowcase out of it or a scrunchie out of it, that's
Yeah.
really interesting and different in a way to keep that culture around you, and in
Yeah.
a way that it reflects your own identity. Because as an Indian American or a South Asian who grew up in not in South Asia, or even somebody who did grow up in India and just has more modern preferences, it's important. So if you
Yeah.
increase demand for these techniques that way, it's a way to save it too.
And I think you had touched up on this a little bit earlier, but about people finding you. So do you have like a marketing plan in place that you think you're going to do to try and get people to your page, to your website?
Yeah, I'm not going to spend on marketing right now. I think I'm just going to like literally just t- uh, market it to my friends and family. And
Yeah.
I think I've already been seeing people like really, it's resonated that way, even from the pop-up shop. Like I posted about it on Instagram, and then I had people like my little sister's friends reaching out to her being like, where can I buy this hat? Like, where
Yeah.
can I get it? And so I actually, even after the pop-up shop, I sold like 4 more hats, just from people reaching out being like, where can I buy this? Can you ship this to me? Like, and
Yeah.
I'll Venmo you or send it through PayPal or something like that. And so it's a lot of like word of mouth is what I'm relying on currently.
Okay. Cool.
And as I scale, then I'm going to probably do like Instagram ads and maybe working with influencers. But for right now, I think there's a way to do
Got
it
it.
without spending that money.
And you've been trying to grow your IG page too. I see that you're like posting pretty regularly on it, right? So is there a growth strategy there too? Are you do you
Not,
have something
I
in mind, or
mean,
are you just
yes,
kind of
I'm just posting and hoping people will find me who find the content interesting. So when you use like I use hashtags, so people who are searching for that kind of stuff can find me.
yeah,
And I tag, you know, the vendors or the designers that I'm showcasing, I will tag them. So if you look at
yeah,
their tag pictures, if you're interested in their page, you'll find me more easily. Sometimes they repost the stuff that I post about them. So that's kind of how it's small. It's like I think just about 500 or slightly less
yeah,
followers. But I think once we actually launch product, it gives people more incentive to follow, because right now they're like, well, we don't really understand what you're posting cool content, but like, are you like a blog, or you what? So people don't really know what it is.
yeah.
But like even after the pop-up shop, I got a lot of new followers because people are like, okay, she's selling stuff. So
Okay.
I'm not worried or concerned about growing it necessarily right now. But once we do have product, I think it'll all just happen very organically.
That's cool. That's a cool approach. It's a different approach than I'm used to seeing on the e-commerce side. So I'm excited to see
It's
the
funny
journey.
because even in business school, like you have the people pursuing entrepreneurship, and they're like, we have to talk to this VC, and like
Yeah, yeah,
we need $1 billion in funding. It's
yeah.
not a billion, but like, and it's just like a very such the opposite approach where it's like we're not talking to VCs at the moment, and we're not doing all of these things that people recommend that we're supposed to do. But
Actually, I
I
don't know if
think
they
it's
still recommend that anymore. Like, I don't know if that's still the case anymore after what just happened
yeah,
in
no,
the last few months.
there's
Like,
a
people
ton
leave
of
money in the fucking bank. If you have debt, like, good luck.
exactly, exactly. So I do think like it's not, there's a reason behind everything I'm doing, and I just want to do it my way and the way I
Yeah,
feel comfortable doing it. And
yeah.
I think it's going to work out well. And people might not understand that at first, but there's so much value in just going against the herd. What's the
Right. For
saying?
sure. For sure.
Everyone's
And
going
do it
this way, and you go
right.
that way.
That's exactly right. And doing it the way that you feel is like organic and authentic to you. Because the
That's
company
how it's going to
itself is
sustain
like,
itself.
yeah, because the company itself is like is entirely driven. It's like it seems like it's like it's hard to do like a business where you're like tied so close to your identity and then have like this idea where it's like sell, sell, sell. Instead, it's got to be, I don't know, it's got to have like this real authentic feel to it. I don't, otherwise, if the ethos around the company doesn't
Exactly.
feel right now, then it's the value of it will
Exactly.
be cheapened really quickly. And I don't think you want to do that. It
Exactly.
seems like to me.
And then the way I've been able to sort of justify that is like, because it is a social enterprise, the
Yeah,
more I sell, the more I'm helping people.
yeah,
And so that
yeah.
is an
True.
amazing thing for me.
Super true. So where you're at now, and I know, I guess to kind of wrap it up, but
Mhm.
being South Asian, is that still something? I mean, obviously, I guess it has a clearly like an impactful and sort of a defining characteristic for you. Can you kind of walk me through like why you decided to follow down this particular path? Like what led you down saying, I'm going to go down the South Asian path and kind of focus on this particular demographic and bringing like art and culture to sort of people out here in sort of like the Western world where like I don't know anybody else who's done something like that. So what kind of motivated you
Mhm.
to do that? And kind of can you talk to me about like your identity being a South Asian?
Yeah. So it's interesting because I'm not like a typical like I don't speak Hindi. I wish I did.
Yeah.
And my parents did try and teach us a little bit growing up, but then it got complicated.
Like
And
my parents just cursed at me in Hindi a lot. That was it.
yeah,
I
yeah,
got
there
a
was
lot of that.
definitely that.
Yeah.
My parents also spoke like a mix of Gujarati and Hindi, so it got super confusing.
Same.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't learn it, and I also like repressed that part of myself growing up because, like, in middle
Yeah, it
school,
was
high
super
school,
embarrassing as a kid.
it's
For whatever
embarrassing, and it's
reason, they
yeah,
everyone fucking made you feel like having Indian parents or like having an
yeah,
accent.
like, oh my God, you're bringing dal to school. Like,
Oh
it smells so
yeah.
bad. What is that? It looks like vomit. Or like,
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of kids are mean at that age. And like,
Yeah.
all you want to do is fit in. And if you're different from the norm, and like for my high school, there's like a handful of Indian people, not very many. And we were
Yeah.
all kind of the same, where we didn't like show our culture
Yeah.
that strongly. So I was like, I don't want to be Indian. I just want to be like everybody else. So I
Yeah.
really repressed that part of myself. Like, I would never tell anyone when I would like watch Bollywood movies with my parents.
Yeah,
It's like my
yeah,
dirty
yeah,
little secret.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
in college, it started to change because I went to NYU, and there's a lot of Indian kids, or kids who grew up in America who have a South Asian background, and I saw a lot of them a little bit different from me, like banding together and enjoying this identity and like going to see Bollywood movies together, going to eat Indian food together. And I was like, well,
Yeah.
why? That this seems cool. Like it's great that they're embracing this. And I feel sort of left out because, I wasn't like fully American. Like I
Yeah,
wasn't, and I wasn't fully Indian because I wasn't enjoying
yeah,
all of these things. And so I was like, well, I think it was like an identity crisis. And
yeah,
so Shy, it's interesting because Shy for me is still an exploration into that. Like it's kind of like I'm finding myself by launching this business and learning more about my own culture too.
for
So I
sure.
don't know everything, but I've learned a lot so far, and
Yeah.
it's really meaningful to me that way.
I mean, if you read some of your posts, it's almost like a quick like history and explanation of like things that we've kind of taken for granted almost. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
you almost forget like the textile like history and like the color rich history in India that they have. You know what I'm saying? So it's like
exactly. And before these posts, sometimes I don't know this stuff either, and it's like
yeah,
I do all this research and I'm learning, and it's so interesting to me that I have to share it with people.
for sure. I think I don't know. To me, I've gotten like a lot out of like kind of this short conversation. It's only been an hour. Maybe we'll do this again when you're launched, and maybe we'll touch base in like a year or something to see where you're at.
Absolutely,
Um,
anytime.
yeah, and so I think if people aren't following your page now, hopefully, I mean, I don't know how many people are gonna fucking watch this thing. We'll see. We'll see what the fuck happens here.
Hopefully
Uh,
millions.
yeah, exactly. Right. That's the plan. So we'll see. But yeah, I think people should definitely follow your page. I got a lot out of talking to you
Thank
too.
you.
I think it's really cool to see somebody who's desi with like a desi background trying to create something that's super authentic, and then kind of also exploring and learning their own culture. Someone that's got like a really strong education background and kind of applying like smart values and principles that they learned in school and kind of bringing it to life, because that doesn't really happen as much. I think a lot of the people that are doing entrepreneurship today don't have that background, so it'll be kind of nice to see
Yeah.
that you chart, and kind of seeing some of the principles that you bring from school, and I think if
Yeah. And
people
if
have
anybody,
yeah.
no, and if anyone is interested in going to business school or pursuing
Yeah,
a similar path, or has questions on entrepreneurship, you can definitely reach out to me on Instagram too. I have a personal account. It's at Sanaa Himani,
cool,
SANAA HIMANI. And
cool.
you can send me any of your questions you have there too.
No
Happy to
doubt.
help.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really good for people to know. And then what I'll do is I'll also link your Shai Collective page as well. And then once you get the website up,
Perfect.
let me know, and then we'll add that in as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're launching that. We'll announce all the launches on there too, at Shai
Cool,
Collective.
cool. Yeah, we're
So
looking
you
forward
can
to it.
you can stay tuned that way. Yeah.
Down.
Thank
All right.
you.
Well, thank you so much, Senna. I appreciate the time.
Thanks for having me.
All
Take
right.
care.
Talk soon. Bye.
Bye.